All right, everybody, we're gonna get started. We're gonna call the meeting to order at 6:33. And I will hand it over to Design Lab to get started.
Yeah, excellent. Good to see everybody in person again. We're glad to be here. Denise, are you able to get our presentation queued up? So obviously Audrey and myself, Andrew wasn't able to join this evening, but it's again good to see everybody in person. We're excited to share where we're at. We've got a lot of updates to share with you in terms of how the design has progressed and where our most recent estimates came in support of the redesign effort. So this should start working.
Yeah.
Yep, so there we are. So we'll go through the schedule, kind of share with you what we've been up to since we met with you back in early February, and some highlights of the schedule moving forward. Just a quick summary of our process and what we've been up to. Then we'll share the updated estimate and where we're at based on the redesign, and then go into a summary of the redesign, look at the updated floor plans, proposed finishes. We have some updated interior vignettes, some new vignettes, and some exterior renderings to share with you all. So it has been a minute since we saw you. We were back here in early February. Obviously, we're March 20th today. And a good chunk of that time since we've last met with you was spent with our estimators. So we pulled together a set of drawings based on the revised scheme. After we met with you, we sent them to estimators. They had a solid 2 weeks with the drawings to review them. And then we had a cost reconciliation effort after that. So that's what we've been largely spending our time with. And then, parallel to all of that, we've been advancing the drawings, coordinating the revised design with our consultant team, with the goal of getting them published to rebid at the end of next week, and being advertised in the Central Register the following Wednesday, and being ready to hit the street, so to speak, to rebid in early April. So that's what we've been doing. So following this evening, we'll be buttoning up the drawing set and be ready to be out to bid in about another week. Any questions on that?
I'm curious about something. When you go through a situation like we've gone through, where you put the bid out and then it's too much, do you find that contractors just say not interested after that, or do you still get enough people bidding that you feel satisfied with that?
That's a really good question. So it's, we are going to be doing, I should mention this, and I'm glad you asked. We're doing a lot of outreach this week and next. Matt and I and our consultant team have collaboratively developed a list of all of the general contractors that we pre-qualified, as well as others that we're going to be personally calling and saying, hey, this is going to be advertised. We encourage you to take a look at it. So our hope is that we will get better interest than what we had in the fall.
Were only pre-qualified bidders allowed to bid in the fall, or was it also open to everyone?
It was only pre-qualified general contractors. They're the only contractors out of the pool of bidders that were pre-qualified. For the rebid effort, we are not pre-qualifying, and not that there's any thought that it necessarily, to the extent that it may have restricted the bidding pool before, we don't want to take the chance of restricting the bidding pool at all. So for the rebid effort, there is no pre-qualification. It's open to anybody who's DECAM certified.
Great, thank you.
So as you will all recall, we explored varying sort of levels of redesign and different scales of options, and based on our input from our 2 cost estimators, we did target what we referred to as option 1C at the time, just under a 2,000 square foot reduction in size. Based on all of their input and expertise, that's what they advised us was going to get us as close to the target budget as we could. So that is the direction that we have gone down since we saw you all. This is the same thing that we shared with you previously. It's just kind of a recap of the different aspects of the redesign and the sort of pros and cons and the adjustments that we were making. But the big takeaway, while obviously, yes, there is a reduction in overall square footage and some reduction in program spaces, we are achieving the vast majority of our programmatic goals that we were working towards through our last process. So at the time, again, based on our contract, our estimators' input, we were targeting the overall square footage reduction to get us closer to our budget number. But ultimately, that does still yield an increase in usable square footage and programmatic space. And then, as we've talked about before, this is the exact same slide. There's a vast improvement to a lot of other aspects of the library in terms of its infrastructure, its access and landscape, and all of the other things that you sort of see listed here. It'll be a fully modernized building with all new systems, meeting the stretch code, being all electric, and checking all of those boxes that we all worked to achieve during our last process. We were targeting around a 7.9 or 7.6 to an 8.2 number with this redesign. And ultimately, we have two estimates. We can share with you the summaries of them. We hired a new estimator, PM&C, with Matt's expertise and help. They had not had eyes on the project at all up until Christmas time, when we were kind of reconciling what to do. And then we had our previous cost estimator, Fennessy, take a look at the redesign as well. Their numbers started further apart than this, and feel free to pass these around, Audrey. Fennessy started at around 8.4, and PM&C was at about 7.9, and we reconciled to the numbers that you see on screen here. So the handout is the summary pages of those two estimates. I'm happy to sort of answer any questions that you have on those. But
so they're closer for reconciliation. How did the cost per square foot of the reconciled number compare to first the estimate from before and then the bid from before?
Yep, good question. So our estimate before was around $900 a square foot.
Yep.
Bids came in around $1,200.
Right. A lot of that was the fire protection.
Yep. And this number in round numbers is just under $1,200 a square foot.
So closer to the bid.
Yes. So we had a lot of conversations with both Fennessy and PM&C based on the bid numbers that we got, filed sub-bid and general, that sort of helped them inform these updated estimates.
Okay. And I don't think there's any opportunities for any kind of ad alternates and improvements to if somehow we came in under budget.
Not necessarily baked into the bid documents, but we are, we do think if the numbers come in lower, you can see this list here, there are some levers that we may pull, during construction,
pretty well.
during construction or through procurement of equipment and furniture.
Okay.
So this screen or this slide I had on here sort of takes the summaries that you all have in front of you and creates large sort of categories of scope of work. So you can see the site improvements are around the $1.6 million number. That's all the civil work, that's all the drainage work, that's everything that happens below the ground that you don't see, as well as all the landscape and everything that we do see, hardscape, softscape, plantings. That's all in that 1.645 number. The MEPF, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, fire protection. Those are, excuse me, pretty easy to pull out of the estimate and kind of understand where those numbers are, but they're on screen for you there as well. And then the architectural and structural numbers, we've categorized those into a demolition number, that's demolition and abatement, exterior and envelope, interior, architecture, and then structural. So those numbers are all there as sort of subcategories. There is more detail beyond that that kind of fills all those out. But we thought this would be helpful for you all to see based on what we received.
I have a question about fire protection. Were either of the cost estimators familiar with the type of system that we're gonna have to install? Because that number is 444.
Mhm.
So I was just curious, the only bid I think we got was like 750. So did they have, did they have any like input on that as far as?
Yes, well, good question. So they are familiar with like the technicalities of the type of system of this MIST system that we have specified. And they did offer insights in that the one and only bid that we received was, unproportionately high and not representative of the scope of work. So in our previous estimate, we were at like 270 or 280 for that system.
Right.
We have increased it just based on conversations we've had with different installers and with manufacturers. But we feel that that is the appropriate number for the type of system that we have specified. And to the inquiry before, like we are calling Sprinkler filed subbidders this week and next to encourage them to look at the project and bid on it.
Great.
And if I can just add to that, I think when we went up to bid last fall, the section in the bid documents wasn't as clear as it could be for fire protection, and that's been cleaned up a bit. So it's much more specific as to what system we're looking for. So it may encourage more people. They may recognize now what we're actually asking for as far as the MIST system. So
Got it.
Matt worked with his team to just clean that up and worked with the state to make sure we had the right specs in there for the system we're looking for.
Any questions before we go through plan updates and the interior and sort of exterior design updates?
Just curious about the site improvements. I have this fear that there's something in the ground we're not anticipating. I mean, that's like the biggest, you can't see what's under there. Have you done any research? Are you anticipating any?
So we've done some borings, geotechnical borings, about a year ago now, in specific locations on the site. And that was all at the time in support of learning more about opportunities to bury the cistern. And through that, we know that there is ledge or, bedrock on the site. It varies in height, but that was one main reason why we have not gone back down that cistern road, because we weren't confident that we could bury it without encountering bedrock. So we know a fair amount about what's below grade, but there's always the unknown. But I think Matt has a appropriate contingency outside of this construction budget for unforeseen conditions. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that, Matt?
Sure, yeah, we do carry a contingency in the event that there is anything that is discovered that's an unforeseen condition, both in the form of construction contingency for any changes that may occur to the contract documents that we need to compensate the contractor for, but also in the form of owner's contingency, which is essentially a safety valve, if you will, in the event that there is anything that we encounter or need to adjust in terms of the scope of the project to the benefit of the town during the project. So we feel that we have some coverage there in the event that we need it.
So we can obviously come back to any of this if we need to, but Audrey's going to walk through the updated plan diagrams, finished plans, share some new interior vignettes, and then I'll share an update on the exterior. We'll talk landscape, and then we can come back to anything we need to. Do you want to advance? It's a little bit of a delay, but it's not terrible.
So these are our updated program plans. They haven't changed too much from what we showed you guys last time. There's just been a little bit more advancement as we're making sure that everything fits well in here. One of the biggest changes we made since last time is making the browsing and arrival area a bit more comfortable to be in. So by angling the surf desk, we've opened up that space a bit more. So there's like soft seating there, a little bit of browsing area there, and a bit of like the possibility for like a self-checkout or something like that underneath the stairs. So it's a bit more of an inviting space there. And then, so our updated finished plans, we really haven't changed the thought behind everything. So a lot of the spaces still have the same finishes that they had before. And we still have that nice warm circulation gasket with that cork flooring and the wood stairs leading up to the upper level. And so this is the updated upper level. We've still got like the large children's collection space and one of the historic rooms to be that like flexible, like multi-purpose room, that program room as we're calling it here.
I just want to point out a little nuanced thing too. It'll become clear in the vignettes and diagrams that we're about to show you, but we've expressed the entrance. We've kind of pulled that out from the main volume. And you can start to see, a little bit of a dialogue between the nature of this proportionally with the turret. And that's expressed on the exterior as well that you'll see here in a little bit. But we still wanted to make that sort of connection and pull some inspiration from that turret into our design, both in plan and in the exterior. So you'll see that here in a moment.
Can I ask a question about the existing turret? So there's I think it's children's computers and reading there.
Mhm.
So there's a couple computer stations next to the circulation desk, and is that just like a little reading nook for the?
Essentially,
That's great.
it's not going to be unlike what's there now.
Yeah.
But it's a nice moment with lots of natural light. Will be a reading space. Yeah.
In that area, you'll have the public computers that anybody can use that'll be like hooked up to printers and stuff like that. But then also the children's computers. So there is most likely like a staff member there, like the majority of the time.
Mhm.
And then the updated.
Sorry, could you go back just one more second? It's just going so fast. I just want to make sure I can see everything.
Yeah.
What are the things in the gray at the top? Family restroom?
Yeah, so that's a lot of like our
Elevator.
back of house. There's the storage room, 2 restrooms, elevator, mechanical room, and then a mechanical closet that opens into the children's space.
Got it. Thank you.
Mhm.
Perfect. Thanks.
And then, yeah, so this is the upper level finishes. You can see that the cork and wood starting to bleed up into the upper level and start to talk with the existing wood flooring. And then, so this is our overall updated interior palette. We were able to like minimize a few of the finishes, but we're still trying to remain with the same idea of having more of a neutral palette that helps to allow like the existing red brick and the existing woodwork to like really allow that to shine. And so we have these program room layouts, just kind of showing that like this room can be organized for different sorts of group gatherings, either a children's program, lectures, presentations, and then just different adult programs, different club meetings or anything like that.
Sorry, can I ask one more quick question? So like what you have represented as like the little, I'm assuming like a double set of doors, are those gonna be like solid doors or glass doors, or do we know yet at this point in the design?
Yes, so those will be glass doors. So that's gonna be a glass wall with glass doors there. So you have like high visibility. It's gonna be on that and also the, what's the Whitney room now? So that you have that like separation acoustically. And you'll also be able to see that a little bit more in some of our interior vignettes.
I do know that like when there's overflow for programming,
Mhm.
they end up in that kind of hallway space. So I just wanted to make sure there's a way they could still potentially prop doors if there's a lot of people and use that kind of
Mhm.
entryway area if they need to.
Yeah, I think the way that we're thinking about it is that these doors could be held open if there wants to be a bit of flow in between the spaces, or they can be closed off to have that room more,
Quiet.
just more quiet.
And so is that the actual capacity if it's set up as a lecture presentation room?
I think we could comfortably get another row in. I mean, all of this, the success of these rooms is gonna really rely on the success of the furniture that we select for that space, which, you know, will be something that we get into, but, I mean, I think we could probably get another row in there, so I think we could comfortably probably fit 25 people in that space.
Okay.
But we haven't gotten into any of the selection of these actual pieces of furniture. It's only to suggest that we'll be able to rearrange things in that space to support different use.
And then there's appropriate storage to move the things back and
Yeah,
forth.
so we've been talking about that with Tina and her team. There's still gonna be the little nook of storage beneath the stair where all the folding chairs are stored now. And then we have the storage room that we were just showing kind of around the corner opposite the elevator, which we'll be able to store some furniture pieces in as well.
And is there any way to make that attic safer and more accessible for storage and things like that? Or is that just an impossible ask?
Well, you'll still be able to access the attic through the stair that you do now, so it.
Like, that's not changing, like that whole configuration.
No, but we are putting VRF units in the attic to feed this, what is the Whitney room and this program room. So there
Yeah.
will be a mechanical equipment up there,
Yeah.
but there will still be space to store, you know, smaller type stuff. We're not going to be bringing cables up and down those stairs, but there is will be room for storage up there.
I just want to make sure, like, because isn't it right now the challenge is you could like whack your head going up and down? Is that what the issue is?
Well, the stairs were redone in 2018 when they redid the room, so I don't think that's.
That's no longer an issue, like going up.
No, I mean, it is. I mean, they're not great, but that's not part of the plan to
Yeah.
redo them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And as far as like technology capacity, so are these gonna be wired so that like, if there was a presentation in a lecture space, we could simulcast it to another space should we have overflow? Like, are we gonna have that ability built into this?
So the plan is, as of now, I believe that like it will be set up so that you can hook up any sort of electronics that are needed for it.
So it's gonna be, this isn't a criticism, it's gonna be basic and we'll just bring like, whatever equipment. If there's not gonna be like built-in systems that come down from ceilings or move, or anything like that.
I don't believe we're planning on having any like built-in in the ceiling coming down. We're showing it as like a movable projector, but there would be, we are allowing for like an AV cabinet in, so like that whole back row there, that's all countertop with cabinets underneath, but there would be like a section to control, there's the wall mounted screen and like any sort of speakers that go with that, and
So I
Yeah.
think we are intending a fully equipped space, but it wouldn't be built in. So we're not proposing speakers built into the ceiling.
Right,
or
so
on
if
the
anything
walls or
like that needs
projector.
to happen, that would maybe need to come through fundraising or something, if
Right,
that was a
but we
priority of
we
somebody.
do have an AV budget as part of the soft cost, kind of outside of the construction, to fully equip this room with the technology we need to support any type of use, be it, you know, simulcasting or small amplification for a speaker event or whatever, but it's not built into the room. So it would be a projector that's on a cart that comes in, and if we need a mic, then all of that stuff would sort of be added.
That stuff is often purchased closer to opening because it changes from year to year. and you
Right.
want to install it with a 3-year-old projector.
Hey, Morgan, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. Thank you. So I did miss the last meeting. I looked over some of the paperwork from the meeting, so I thought I was caught up, but am I understanding that, does this mean that the entire community room downstairs is no longer a part of this? In this reduction of square footage, and that this is now the only program room?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So we also wanted to show how the children's room can be shifted a little bit to have different sort of functions as well. So you can have a bit of a story time here, and the little bump out there that's right above the entrance on the lower level. So it could be set up for a story time and a reader or anything like that. And the intention is that all of the shelves in the middle of the room are on casters so that they can be moved around and reorganized as needed to allow for that. And then we wanted to show you guys some updated interior views of these spaces. So this first one is right as you enter into the addition. So as soon as you walk into that vestibule, this is what you're seeing. This is the browsing and arrival area. So you've got the circulation desk and then the workroom on your right. And you're looking from there through some like stair millwork. You can start to see the stairs there. And then you're looking into the collection space further back.
Question we have. We have a question. Wait, I'm sorry.
Am I allowed to ask a question?
Not right now, thank you. Morgan, go ahead.
Yes, sorry, I'm just trying to picture this now. So this is our entrance on the bottom level. So this means that there's no community room, which means there's no access to outside space from the bottom level either, right?
So you can still access the exterior space. There's no secondary entrance to the exterior space. And we do have landscape plans later on that should help to show this a little bit more. But we do still have that exterior space that can allow for various groups or functions or anything like that.
Yeah, and Morgan, the primary entrance into the library will still be from this new lower level.
Right. I guess what I'm catching up on is that I feel like a big part of what we liked about some of these plans was that there was accessibility, like the community room would have led outside with the door so that there could be extra space and overflow space and a way to sort of have programming that was separated from the rest of the library. And that just is like completely gone because of having to reduce square footage.
Yes, unfortunately, that's the biggest compromise of this approach. The only way to reduce the amount of square footage by what we needed to was to lose that program space. Yes.
Okay.
So yes, I forgot you weren't at that previous meeting, but that is the biggest departure from this reduced scheme from where we previously were.
Okay, thank you.
Aisha.
I just missed this on the floor plan earlier, but what is where the ramp used to be now?
So it's here. So where it used to be, we've got the restroom and we were able to shift the elevator over to give a little bit more space by the main stair and have a little bit more openness there. So yeah, we've got the restroom and then the possibility of having like a small like meeting pod,
Okay,
like
cool.
telephone booth type of deal.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
And then, so here is, you're at the bottom of the stairs and like, we had a very similar view that we'd shown previously that really shows that connection between the verticality of the stairs and the verticality of the turret as you're walking up them. So it's a very similar character and feel of the circulation gasket that we had before. You're just able to see the browsing and arrival space now along with the collections all together. And then, so here you're up at the upper level. And so you're in the historic side of the building now, looking back towards the stairs and towards the children's collection in the back. So that's what's behind that glass there. But again, we're trying to keep the character of these spaces as similar as we had them before, and like keeping this connection between the historic and the addition, keeping that like still very similar. And then so here we have the children's collection space. And so you're standing as if you just walked straight into the children's, and you're looking out towards that large window. So that's what's right above the, like where you would enter the addition below it. So we've still got those nooks. We've got a variety of heights and spaces there. And so you can kind of see with some of the shelves ghosted out, like the possibility of this space to be used for like story time, puppet shows, anything, something small like that. And then, so this one, and we have one right after it, which is the program space. And they're just showing that you can have two different uses in this room. And so you can see the glass wall and the glass door there, and then behind it you can see the glass door and wall of the Whitney room as well. And then, yeah, here we've got it set up just for a different program if wanted.
Just to add there, I mean, we talked to Chris, the children's librarian, about this space and, getting water into that room and a sink and adequate storage on that back wall beneath the counter, makes this room much more usable for the types of programs that it may be used for children's events. But, any types of even adult craft or type of activity will be better supported in here because there'll be more infrastructure to support it.
So is that what that back wall is showing?
Yes, yeah, so that's a countertop with a whole bunch of cabinets and storage space below it. And there's a sink in the corner of it.
I mean, is that taking away from your capacity for that room in terms of like the programs themselves?
A little, but remember in the previous version, like the children's room itself had that corner of space for children's activities. And that space was equipped with a different type of floor and a sink and storage for kids' arts and craft. Like we don't have that room in the children's room now. And there is a fair amount of stuff that needs to be stored to support that type of activity. So we think this is the right approach, is to create a modest level of storage in this room, but still maximize, to your point, the floor area as much as possible. We did have schemes that we reviewed with Chris in the library staff, sort of behind the scenes, where we actually like carved out closets into this room to store furniture and to store other stuff, and like that seemed like not the right approach. So we kind of landed here as the compromise.
And vertical storage wouldn't.
It gets really awkward in the room, like in plan and even three-dimensionally, like trying to take a corner out of this room. We did study it, and it just didn't seem to yield enough storage to sort of justify the awkwardness in the plan.
I mean, we'll have fire safety capacities for all these rooms anyway, right? Like it might be that removing that wouldn't even change that anyway or something, so.
It seems like an awful lot of furniture movement. What is it, like, is that a responsibility of the library staff to do that? Or is it the custodial staff of the town that will be rearranging furniture as needed?
No, I mean, we don't have the custodial staff, so, if you've been in Pompo, I mean, picture the community room. The tables, what we talked about with them, maybe not these ones, but I think, the larger adult tables, I'll call them, will be just very similar to Pompo. They sort of fold up, they're on wheels. When you're not using them, you fold it up, you can roll it away. They're very easy to move. The chairs would be stackable, so yes, there will be some setup required, but to be honest with you, it's fairly simple. And the fact that, and I don't know, this is the first time I think we're seeing these tables, so I don't know how movable these would be or how easy these are to move around. But that's certainly a concern because of storage. So the plan would be to have them as easy, and with the hardwood floor, you could just sort of roll them. So if she is having something in the children's area, you can wheel some of those tables in, to really make it as flexible as possible.
And Tina, are these spaces that people will be able to like book to use that aren't, if like Chris or somebody else isn't using them?
You mean like larger groups?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like in your booking forms, you'll have setup required. you'll
Right,
have
like if
all
they
that.
just want the
So
little
you'll have-
meeting room,
Correct.
they could book that, because, or if they wanted to book this.
But you'll also have noticed is what I'm saying, if they like, if it's gonna be, if somebody's using this and it's gonna be something that doesn't
Oh,
need tables that don't
right,
need
that
chair,
requires
like all of that will
right.
be in your form for what the person
Right.
needs for the setup of the room.
Yeah, the online scheduling software that we bought a couple of years ago for like museum passes and stuff has the
Do
capacity
you
to do
use
that.
Assabet?
Yeah.
It's, the previous design where we had the dedicated community room on the lower level, and that was still imagined to be able to change types of furniture uses. I think the big kind of program thing that's shifted here is that this space is also supporting potential children's groups too. So that's like before, it was kind of the community room was mostly adult programs, but if the children did need to move down there for a larger group, they'd have that capacity. Although they had their own space in the children's space, which was kind of the main space that those types of programs would occur. But here, like this is now wearing kind of three hats instead of two, where in the previous design. So I said it before, and I don't want people to like focus on the furniture that we have in this vignette, because like we haven't gone through that selection process, and like the success of these spaces, as I said, like is going to come down to the furniture we pick and the quantity of that furniture, how it's stored, how it's moved, and make it as easy to facilitate changes of use as possible.
And Ben, remind me, and I guess for the folks here, you have figured out a way that could potentially lock off the circulation desk, so this room could be used after hours or on a weekend, correct?
Yes.
We are working through that with Tina and the library staff. It's not as straightforward as it was before, because obviously the community room is in a very different location, but we are working through that with the intent. We haven't finalized it all, but that this space, correct me if I'm wrong here, Tina, could be utilized after the library is closed for a different, community group use, if that's desired.
Just this one room.
That's what my.
I don't mean,
question was.
again, not a criticism, I'm just trying to make sure I
Well,
understand.
it's a fair question. Maybe go back to the second floor.
We did actually figure out where that lock off.
Yeah, so you could still enter, so we have two entrances still, right? So depending on where you park and where you're arriving from, to get access to that upper level program space, we're working through this, but the thought is that you could still enter here. We would be able to lock all of this off, with a movable screen that the library staff closes at the end of the day. So all of this portion of the library could be secured. The door to the circ desk could be secured. So you could come in here, have access to the elevator or the stairs to get you up to the second floor. The children's room doors are locked, so you wouldn't be able to get into that space. But then, Audrey, if you click up to the, oh, sorry, you already did. You could come up here through the stairs and get access to that. This room could be locked. There would be like interstitial spaces that you could still kind of walk through, but you'd be able to secure much of the other non-community program spaces.
Okay. And then, so the quiet reading room and the program room, like what's the soundproof, what's all, like, Like if there's a program with, 25 3-year-olds in it, what's the experience somebody's gonna have in a quiet reading room?
So assuming both sets of doors are closed, I mean, you'll be visually connected, you will see the activity. It will not be 100% acoustically isolated. You'll be able to hear noise, but it will be, far better than the condition now.
Right.
If there's a group of screaming children, like they're still gonna hear muffled screaming children, but it'll be a much better condition than it is now.
Can you, to that point, what is downstairs if somebody doesn't want to be right next to the screaming children and they're not a parent of those screaming children? Is there a place an adult could go down during that activity and sit downstairs?
Yep, so there's a meeting room, there's gonna be some furniture kind of sprinkled into the collection area. We haven't solved all of that yet. And there's the reading spaces within the browsing and arrival. We need to talk about the nature of this space. There's opportunity for furniture here, to create kind of little nooks and pockets of different types of spaces. So there should be a good variety of environments for people to, find their little nook. But the quiet reading room is intended to be the quiet reading room. But obviously, if there's a program going on next to it for an hour or whatever, there'd be some noise bleed during that time. But when it's not, it should be a pretty quiet, traditional and kind of quiet reading space.
Have you guys explored the possibility of making the quiet reading room another flexible space, like the program room? Like so that you could potentially have like two, but it could also be the quiet reading room when it's not in being utilized in a program sense?
That's a good point and good question. And maybe we weighed the Whitney room versus what we have now, the program room is like.
Like periodicals will be in there, newspapers. At one point, we talked about having some computers in there. So we kind of abandoned the idea of having it be a flexible space. But
I will say, so before the renovation in 2018, it was exactly like this, where there were doors, there wasn't arches, because they put those back in to add to the historic quality of the space. But there were doors on the quiet reading room as well as the program room. And there were definitely times when there were simultaneous meetings in both of those rooms. So like maybe the trustees who had a smaller group at the time, they would go into the quiet reading and then there would be the Girl Scouts or something in the program room. So that because there was a table like probably the table that's in there now, it's like a table like this, so you could have a meeting going on there at the same time. So, I would say if you have a table with 6 chairs like that, there might be groups that will want to potentially reserve that space for their smaller meetings, would be my guess.
Morgan, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm very confused about some of this stuff right now. So this program room is flexible space, but is largely going to be used for children's programs. And it is across the way from the children's collection space. So does that mean that Chris's desk is going to be in the program room?
No, Chris's desk is in the children's room.
Okay,
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was just gonna add, we've had a couple different conversations with Chris over the past few months as this has evolved. And she's, I think it's fair to say Tina kind of fully endorsed the strategy and having the children's space, different types of children's use kind of dispersed on this upper level.
Okay, so everyone's okay with that, the children's collection room and the program room being on opposite sides. And you're telling me that the walking back and forth and the multiple spaces for kids to be in is going to be crossing over the only real quiet reading section in the whole place?
Well, the way I see it is Chris does 3 programs a week, maybe 4. So I think the intent would be that with the movable furniture in the children's room, she could potentially have families in there. And then when she does a program, they'd go to the program room. So yes, they would have to traverse that area, but it's not as frequently as you might think.
Okay, that's helpful to know. I'm really this is part of just sort of thinking about how this library takes us into the next 20 or 30 years. And, you know, I realize that the data that we have to work with is based on what we're doing right now. It just feels a little silly to me that there's only really one dedicated quiet reading space and that it is upstairs with all of the kids' stuff going on around it. And it's not fully quiet. Like that sounds crazy to me. Like I understand that the number of programs and the number of people that might be quietly reading at the same time is probably pretty small. It just means there's no, like, I'm surprised that this is I'm just surprised that this is how the layout landed. But if everybody seems to be okay with it, then okay.
Can you go back to the other floor?
I think also our hands are tied a bit because the second floor doesn't sustain weight. So we can't put collections up there. So it's kind of always been this way where we have to keep mostly everything on the first floor.
Right.
Otherwise, the second floor could sustain, maybe we'd have other options, but.
Right.
But like, you're
Okay.
also saying that empty blue space will probably be a seating area, right? Isn't that what
The
you
one at the
said?
bottom? Oh, at the
Oh,
top
at the
there.
top, right?
Yep.
We think so.
And within the
Yeah.
stacks, I would hope there'll be seating because
Can you say something about the light down there? Because is it still gonna feel cave-like if that's where people have to go to find a place to read? I mean, the appeal of the upstairs is all the windows right now.
Yep, so we'll still have borrowed light or natural light here. It'll be improved or from what's there now. And we're obviously putting in all new, you know, modern light fixtures, LED light fixtures with way better controls and quality of light than what's there now. So, I mean, it'll still be a space with limited natural light, but we think the quality of the overall light will be greatly enhanced from what's there
Okay.
now.
I echo Morgan's concern about the only quiet space being in the midst of every child's space except the teen lounge. And then you've got kids downstairs too. So that's just my concern as well.
can I ask, on the lower level, where the break room is, that's right now where that slanted glass window is. Are you expecting that to be a solid wall on the first floor? And then I know on the second floor, you're putting the windows back. But what do you expect the exterior of that side of the building to be?
So sort of the top of where the break room is there,
Yeah.
Denise. It's quite low. You'll see it in the exterior elevations. But it's a knee wall that's gonna be clad similarly to the rest of the addition, with a window that lets light into the break room, but it's, you know, it's up high.
Okay.
Kind
But
of-
there will be some natural light in
There'll
there.
be
as well.
natural light in there, yes, yeah.
And I'm sorry, the meeting space and the teen lounge, is that a window along the back wall of each of those or no windows?
No, those are all below grade.
The teen lounge does have the windows
Oh, that's right.
being restored in the,
Yeah.
in the turret. So
Those
they're
luxurious
just up
windows.
higher from where it's cut right now.
And we couldn't take the teen lounge and the meeting room and make them one space that's a quiet reading room and put the teens upstairs in the quiet reading room. I understand it's a square footage difference.
Yeah, I was thinking we could just flip the teen room and the quiet reading, you're gonna lose space, but at least.
That's a lot of space lost.
Well, I would give the meeting space and the teen room together as quiet reading, so that's 280 square feet, right? And then the upstairs space is 375. So yes, it's a loss, but then we can also build this empty blue space as, because the whole point of having like the periodicals and stuff or the newspapers is because some people will travel with those things. They'll pick them up and make their own space, right? So if we give them their own other spaces, that might not necessarily feel like a loss to them because there's no way to compare.
But you want to put the teens in the Whitney room with a beautiful fireplace?
I mean, I don't think I have the, woe is me attitude about teens, probably because I have 3 of them. But I don't, I think that teens can be respectful of spaces. I mean, I also think that like the reality about teen spaces, as everybody knows, is you give teens a dedicated space and that's absolutely not where they're going to go because teens don't like anybody to tell them what to do. So teen really means probably 8 to 11-year-olds, not actual teens. 18-year-olds are never gonna go in a teen space, because they think a 13-year-old might have been in there ever, and they're not gonna touch it, like, that's not how life works, right? So teens like to make things their own, and they are gonna come in and do exactly what we did not predict they would want to do in these spaces. That's just the reality of the age. But they're gonna grow with it too, like, where they go at 13 will be different than where they go at 16. That's part of why we're doing this project, right? I mean, that's the whole essence of a library. Make it your own.
So the only thing I would say about that, it's a nice idea. You're gonna lose that little meeting room.
Yeah.
And a lot of people do go into libraries looking for little meeting rooms to do things.
I mean, I think people could just go into the meeting room if it's open, because more often than not, it's probably gonna be empty. And they could, I mean, if there wasn't enough room for whatever reason in the spot that's the teen lounge now, to be quiet reading, somebody could just pop over into the meeting room and sit down and read. There's that too.
I would
You know,
hate to see
often
that
you just-
upstairs space taken away from, as an adult space.
The Whitney room?
Yeah.
People will use them as like, they might be with an attorney or might be with somebody, they're gonna want a little,
You're gonna want doors.
they're gonna want those. It's something that gets used these days in libraries.
What
You
kind
don't
of,
have to have, it's just something I've seen.
what kind of doors are you gonna have with the Whitney room? Because that could be a difference too. Different doors have different acoustic quality.
Yeah, I think, I mean, up until this moment, we were kind of thinking of them as sort of Herculite type doors, but I think, we need to give that more consideration.
Do you have an acoustic consultant? So that person might be able to give you a sense of what, I mean, you're not gonna hear nothing, but whether the noise would be intelligible enough to be distracting. Because that seems to be, it's such a nice space that people are gonna wanna read there.
I totally get it. I just don't want to roll this out and have people complaining about noise from the minute that they roll in. And I feel like if we could be anticipating that right now, we have a much easier time maneuvering around it than if we say, this is your space, and people are like, yeah, that, I don't want it.
I agree with Marcy on that. I think that the way that it's set up upstairs, it's almost like the whole upstairs is for children. And that's great. But I think that the certain people that don't want to be around kids, it's gonna be a problem, whether it's acoustically sound or not in some cases. So I think it would be at least worth exploring.
On the other hand, if you turn the Whitney room into the teen room, does that become a noise center if someone's doing a presentation in the adjacent? Are the teens gonna be noisy?
I mean, the teens all have their AirPods and they're watching their phones. I mean, teens in spaces still are sort of solitary. I mean, they come, they drop their backpacks off, they walk to Russell's, they buy a ton of candy, they come back, like that's, you know what I mean? And then they get on their phones. They don't.
I thought there was also some, this might be going back a ways, but some comments about teens not wanting to be near the kids area, which I do find valid. And this, I guess, what we're dealing with is the fact that we've lost square footage. So trying to separate teens and kids and quiet reading is very challenging.
I would rather have to sell to the teens that they have their own private room adjacent to kids programming spaces that's largely going to be used, like, let's just say before 4 p.m., than sell to the adults that they have no quiet space at 10 a.m. That's just my take on it. I mean, I don't, like the whole, I mean, there's different adult populations, right? Like there's adults that don't come in until after 6 because they work, but then there's the adults that are gonna work from home from the library, or the adults that are gonna, come over from the Council on Aging and do, you know what I mean? Like it's an all day space for adults. So, and that's a lot of age range to figure out.
Well, and right now, there's the teen room in the adult section, and then upstairs, there's quiet reading with the kids. So like there's not really, other than where you could put furniture in like those blue spaces, there's not necessarily a place without children, which for me is not a problem, but for other people it might be.
What's the empty blue space at the top again? Can that be a meeting room?
It's doing a couple different things. The elevator, the elevator door is here, so you get off the elevator here. And then we also, this is a means of egress that we have to maintain to get to that door. So, what's exactly on that wall? At the moment, we're anticipating low shelves to store part of the collection, but we could think of that as potential furniture. This is, just a placeholder at the moment for, kind of one of those phone booth proportioned, like quiet, single person meeting spaces to go take a Zoom call and kind of get in an acoustically separated space. I don't know how long I make this smaller. It's gonna go back out?
Yep.
Oh, there we go. We're very strapped trying to get the collection numbers to work in all of this blue space with the number of shelving. But I think we need to continue to reevaluate it, and if we're able to remove, sorry, Tina, a little bit of shelving, like you could start to imagine this being a really nice pocket of quiet space, relatively separated from people coming and going and separated from the upstairs. It's got natural light right next to it. So that could be not an enclosed space, but a space that has some soft furniture within the stacks that feels like a quiet place to tuck away from what's going on upstairs. So I think we need to continue to evaluate that as a potential strategy.
Could I ask a question, just sort of germane to the topic of noise and acoustics? Have you, and maybe you have, and it's ruled it out, but has an active sound masking system been considered for the project?
That's a good question. I don't know that it's come up.
If we're worried about sort of ambient noise from crossing activities, it is, those kinds of systems can be helpful for sort of creating sort of white noise, for lack of a better term, that makes it so that noises that aren't right next to you, you can have conversations, but noises that are coming from across the room or from an adjacent room are very much diminished. I don't know if that's something that the acoustics consultant on your team might want to weigh in on, but that could be helpful in managing some of this cross traffic that is being.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I think we should have that conversation with them. As well as revisiting the types of partitions and glass between these spaces to create as acoustically isolated spaces as we can.
Were you picturing the stacks in this collection space to be movable?
Not necessarily, no. It just, they're considerably taller than what we have in the children's area, and they just become unwieldy and not totally realistic to move.
Can I ask one question and then make one comment? One comment about like the acoustic and the doors and stuff like that. Again, I envision probably what's gonna happen is there's gonna be some overflow for meetings and stuff. So like in my house, when I have a tight space, I use a pocket door. So obviously I don't know if that is an option, because obviously, with glass, I don't know how that would work, but just
They exist.
thinking, just thinking out of the box in terms of like a way to get, in the second floor, just a more usable room, the entryway area, because right now that does actually get used a lot for Chris programs I've seen. I oftentimes sit out there, so it'll be like a bunch of the parents, and then there's, a bunch of kids inside the actual room, but there's a lot of us overflowing into the hallway. So it's just something to keep in mind if there is some way to get a solution where you're not, or if the doors can fold flat or something.
I think we haven't specified now is like they can open 180 degrees.
Perfect,
so it's-
exactly, stuff like that, so that it's like, gives us a little bit more space. And then, have we looked at the second and first floor, the things like the staff break room, will that be potentially, like, have we looked at that for multi-use too, like where we have it as a break room and potentially a meeting room, given the reduction in square footage?
We haven't discussed that.
that.
We haven't discussed that with.
I can't see
Tina.
giving staff space
out to the public.
It's gonna be where they put their purses and their jackets and eat their lunch and. Yeah, it's just a private space for staff.
Can you bring the floor plan back up?
I mean, it looks like if you're able to address that sort of bottom corner, maybe it's that one stack or that along the wall that you weed out. You certainly could put like a couch or some chairs there, and with the light, it would make a nice little reading nook.
We made those 3 standing tall shelving units 3/4 of the size. Do you know what I mean, like lengthwise?
Oh, yeah, that's, yeah.
If you
that's-
cut those down, you could make a nice reading
Yeah,
area.
that's what I was implying. I mean, we can get into the numbers and what it could do to the collection volume count, but I was just thinking as we were listening to this, just removing one set of shelves, maybe 1.5, and reproportioning those.
Right.
To make that like this, a reading area.
Do you think that's something that could work? Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about weeding for a while.
Right, yeah.
And that's natural light, right? That white rectangle to the left of the meeting room space.
Yes, it's natural light. It would be up high, from shoulder height or head height, depending on how tall you are, up to the ceiling, and you would kind of be looking up and out to natural light. There wouldn't be like a direct view because you're below grade.
Right. No, that's fine. I'm just thinking it's just, I don't, like that's a great spot to have a couple of chairs just to feel like you can have the sunshine near you as opposed to like sitting in the middle of the collections and reading. Not that it matters, but if someone's going to sit and read, that's when they're going to think, ooh, it'd be nice to have some light, as opposed to they're browsing around looking for the book. They're not going to be thinking about how dark it is in there or something, So
Yeah.
not that it's
no,
going to be dark. I know LEDs, all that, but
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great thought.
What is the little like is that also light on the left, that little like floating door?
I think that's a remnant.
Okay.
Cat of the egress out of this is what you're asking about?
Yeah,
That's the foundation of the stairs upstairs.
above
to
it.
get you out of
Got
the
it,
program
thank you.
area.
Thank you.
My question, that egress you're talking about, can't that be open for the public to be able to come in after hours to that room?
This back here, you're asking?
One second, she bring it all the way in the end.
Where there's a ramp, yeah, there's ramp and stairs there.
Potentially, yeah. I think that would just kind of be an operational thing on whether or not that wanted to be unlocked and used by the
Would that-
public to access that room.
Would that solve a problem of everybody having to meander through the library in the evening to get to the program room?
It would preclude anybody with disabilities that could
Yeah,
use.
it's not an accessible path, so you'd still need to at least keep this open, because people need to be able to come up that.
There's a
ramp.
ramp out there now. Oh, it's all getting taken down.
But potentially, and I mean, we could talk about that as a potential strategy, because then you could maybe, close it off here or something, and then people just come in upstairs to access that program.
No, but we talked about, they need to access the bathroom.
I was gonna say, you can't use the potty.
That was one of them.
Yeah, you're right. We did talk about all this. yes.
Answers the question.
Should we continue on and talk about the exterior?
Well, I have a question. This is like a procedural question. So the theory is that we're voting to approve this as is at the end of this meeting. So any concerns that have been raised right now are either gonna remain unresolved, or how do we handle that?
Well, they have to take a vote. Right now, we're scheduled to go to bid April 3rd. There really is not time to redesign. And so if there are concerns that we have, that's what the membership needs to vote on.
But if I could add, like, if there's things that we need to do as part of receiving feedback, like making sure that we've got those doors swinging 180 degrees, or making sure we've got the right acoustic separation, or looking at ambient, noise solutions, or thinking about that area we were just looking at on the lower level and incorporating more furniture. I mean, we can make all of those types of adjustments in preparation for the bid.
Right, and I would say, if there's still discussion about what to put inside the rooms.
Yeah.
Naturally, we're not buying furniture as part of the construction contract, so that discussion can continue to happen. But the layout would need to be sort of defined today.
The size of each individual room.
And
the doors.
And the doors and.
Like even your inquiry about the teen space being teen space versus the quiet reading as quiet reading room, like the walls, the enclosing that space, door location, like that's all part of the construction stuff, but how we're furnishing those rooms, we can still evaluate that if we.
So you're saying that as long as the space stays the exact same square footage, the use of the space could still be swapped out between now and the day the library reopens?
Yeah, I think so. We're not buying furniture, or we're not buying, seats and tables as part of this contract. We're not buying shelving as part of the construction documents. That's all coming later, that the town's gonna be purchasing themselves. So if we decided, following this conversation, that the Whitney room doesn't want to have a reading table and kind of lounge chairs the way we've diagrammatically showed it with shelving on the edges, we can reevaluate that.
And I'm guessing I'm the only one that wants to do this anyway, so it probably really doesn't matter, but the downstairs teen space meeting room, structurally, could that be all one space?
Structurally, yes, but I think Frank's point about having that small tight meeting room space is a really good one. That was early on a very big request from the community to have that type of meeting space in the library.
Totally get it, but I also would argue that having separate space for children and adults was also a priority for.
Yeah, no, you're
fair
right.
amount of people.
We are making compromises. in
Totally
this-
get
in
it.
this
Again,
reduced-
I'm not trying to cannonball this entire process. I just think that these are considerations that we don't want to have to deal. We've been just dealing with so much criticism. It's just really a slog, right? So if we can get ahead of some of this, it's better for those of us that live here, is just my thinking.
Yeah, no, I completely understand.
Just for the point, oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
Maybe we do if you were gonna swap the rooms, do like some sort of openable partition between the old meeting room and the other space or something.
That's not a bad idea.
Make it a little more flexible.
Potentially, yeah.
That's a pretty good idea.
I'm just curious if your assertions about how teens behave in the library matches the librarian's experience.
I mean,
Because I'm just wondering, why are we creating a teen room if teens don't use the room?
It's not the age group that you're thinking of.
So, okay, so why are we creating a sequestered space for children?
So there's gonna be a bunch of middle schoolers because
Yeah,
there always is. So that's your teens. Your teens
yes.
are
Yeah.
from Hale that come over every
And they will
afternoon.
use a private room. Is that
Correct.
your take as a librarian?
Will they stay in there?
Okay, will they stay in there?
They'll go in and out, they'll go outside to get food, snack, chat, then go inside. Teen has some nice gaming systems for them that always keeps them grounded. And they'll do some homework, chat more with their buddies. They're loud. So
Just,
it is
I'd
nice
be
to put
interested
them
in
behind a
hearing Tina's
door.
perspective a little bit.
No, I
Yeah.
agree. I mean, even now, they've finally realized we're here. So like today, today, I had 3 kids come in and they just dumped their stuff and then they go to Wessel's and they get food and then they come back. And they've been hanging out downstairs in that little space that we have.
Right, but even last week, they were all out on the picnic table.
That's
They
right,
were
the
playing
picnic
tag
table.
outside, they were
Yeah.
running around, they were hanging out on the table. It's nice. And when you get to the exterior, you'll see that there will still be room for them to be outside. So, in the warmer weather, I would expect them to be hanging out around the wall at the front.
That's what I.
Yeah, the outdoor spaces
amazing for the teens, especially because the days the library is not open, if it's nice weather, teens still come and use current, I mean, not this minute, but the outdoor space,
There
right?
was a
So,
kid waiting outside Randall today when we left.
Yeah.
right. And like the Minuteman bus still drops off there, like there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that still goes on there.
Well, again,
So,
if you say they're loud, you don't want them next to the presentation space, right? Except that they're probably not gonna be presentations in the afternoon.
I mean, they're loud, like I don't, they're exciting to, school's over and they're waiting for their mom to come pick them up, they're loud. They have, 7 pounds of Swedish fish and they're. It's what they do. I mean, the biggest consideration would be how many garbage cans can you fit in the teen space? Like that's like, they also don't pick up after themselves. Like it's a problem.
I think they'll like the nooks. I mean, I can see that being a real draw for them.
I do have a procedural question, kind of in the vein of what Marcy was saying. So if like Design Lab is saying that they can like do the doors and the different things, so would we just vote contingent on that, like what they're saying that they'll add in this meeting, or that they'll make sure that is gonna happen or whatever? You understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I mean, the vote tonight is that we need to go to bid. So what's going to bid for construction is what we need to be okay with, because otherwise we're pushing everything off much further. And the escalation costs and the estimates are calculated through when we hope to award a contract. But we're not voting on the individual spaces. It's the square footage, it's the room layouts, it's the changes with the doors, or just things like that.
Right, but I think some of those things are like bringing up the meeting room and the team room, and like, if you have that, like Frank was saying with maybe you don't make that wall permanent, then that changes essentially that piece of the building. Is that something that, let's just say hypothetically, somebody says, oh, we want to do that, and we decide that's a good idea, and then he says, yeah, we can do that. It's like, if he says, yes, they can do that, do we vote contingent on like, yes, we want it to go to bid under, our new circumstances, or is that?
Yeah, because that's construction.
So that could,
That would be
okay,
in the construction bid.
okay,
So they would have to revise the drawings that we have to
Right, but-
account for those changes.
but we wouldn't have to see them, right? If Design Lab just says confidently, like, yeah, we
Right.
could do that.
Right.
Okay, that's my question, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, move on to the exterior.
Sure. Yeah, so let's take a look at the exterior. This should feel largely familiar. You've seen this diagram a million times. The sort of vertical rhythm of the existing building continues to inform the layout of the addition. We have increased the height of the addition from what you guys saw back in early February. And we started, as I mentioned earlier, when we were looking at the plans, sort of expressing that corner to sort of riff off the turret in a way that you haven't, that's been updated, I should say, from February. So the palette is largely the same. The only big difference that we're not seeing in this slide that we saw before was there's no slate roof. That the whole sloped roof geometry that existed before, that's not part of this redesign. It's a flat roof. It steps a little bit at the corner that you'll see, but otherwise it's largely the same. The same conversation that we had about masonry, the detailing of the masonry and riffing off some of the details on the original building still remains, and we still have the same process embedded into our specifications about selecting the final masonry that we did previously. So none of that has really changed from a material perspective. Again, those details that were sort of inspired by, this is the design that you saw last time. We have revised it and refined it. It's modest, but you can start to see more verticality here at the corner. The entry is just around this corner here. So this is starting to read more like a sort of complement to the turret. This is that children's space. It's got a prime view out to the common, and right above the entry, it's got a big window. It'll be a really nice space for children to gather up there. And then the nature of the rest of the volume of the addition is very, very similar to where we had it in the previous design. It has obviously gotten smaller in footprint. We have refined the height of the windows, and they're now punched windows instead of kind of divided lights, but overall, it's got a lot of the same language that we had previously. Obviously, just the volume has gotten smaller. This is the nature of that space that you were asking about, Denise. So those are the windows into the break room. So they will have natural light in there, but they are sort of above your head. The stone base exists, the kind of detailing of the stone and the masonry between the windows, that's all very, very similar to where we were before. And just gonna click back, it's a very nuanced change, but we did add a little bit more height to the addition, and we did make that change, as I said, for this to really read and sort of talk to the turret. Admittedly, last time we were here in early February, this was a little underbaked, and we were just trying to get stuff updated and in front of you guys. So we feel like the adjustments here have come together really nicely compositionally.
It looks really beautiful.
Yeah, it looks much better. Is the actual height taller as well, like inside, or it's just that's such a
It's a
facade?
parapet, which is a knee wall, so we've kind of baked the height
Gotcha.
to
Thank
get it.
We were-
It helps a lot.
Would you flip back one more time, so I want to see the south.
Yeah, so it's small on screen, but this has come up about 1.5 feet to time out better with that datum. And then the corner has bumped up a little bit further to create that sort of.
Yeah, that looks really good.
Condition.
Right. The windows we were just talking about on the inside where we talked about putting some furniture and moving some stacks away. That's right above the word west.
It is, yep.
And there are windows there.
Well, yes, there are windows there, but they're behind this knee wall here. And it's called it's called an areaway. It lets light down in there, but you're not seeing them in elevation because they're.
Where
Kind
the
of like
water
it is
is
now,
now.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of like
Similar.
Only that will be filled in, that whole like pavilion-y area.
Okay.
But
Whatever
there'll
that
still
is.
be light coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all that matters.
Lisa, go ahead.
Can you say something about the gasket and how it's joining the building? Has that changed at all in size or like
Not really.
width?
No, it's still a very similar approach. You only see half of it here because it's kind of buried behind the turret. That'll all be glass, the full width of the stair, like you saw in that interior vignette, to kind of bridge between new and old.
Okay.
Oh, that was weird. So what do we have next? So here's this kind of previous view that we've all seen a million times. And here's the updated exterior vignette that describes the nature of the addition. So it's the same vantage point that we've been all been looking at before. Obviously, the volume of the addition has changed. We still have an arrival court right off the sidewalk that's all accessible. It's a low slope. There's no handrails. There's still an opportunity. You'll see here this in the landscape plan here in a moment. There's sort of a forecourt. There's some space out there for people to read. We can get some furniture out there beneath new trees. And the entry is kind of just here. There's that big window into the children's area. All these windows here continue to be those kind of nook conditions up in the children's room that we were doing last time.
Do we have the numbers on like the actual usable acreage outdoor space, like compared to what the usable outdoor space is right now?
Not off the top of our heads, but we could easily do that.
That would be just a great metric, I think.
Yeah, the quality of this space is intended to be very similar.
Yeah,
to
it's
what we have
gorgeous.
before.
It's really, really
You know,
nice.
we would call it an outdoor reading room and nice ones, like people will want to be out there and sit there amongst the trees.
Yeah,
And-
when I came, the front of Randall had like all those big bushes that we took out so that we could put the tables, and people still sit there now, so it'd be nice to have those back again.
It's south facing, it's gonna be great.
And frankly, nice to have them like a tiny bit safer, like
Yeah.
tucked in a little
Not
bit,
on the
right?
road.
Like not, right, not like.
So just clicking forward.
Oh, before you go on that, is that lawn to the entrance? Is that proportional? That lawn looks gigantic.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, we continue to fight with this in our perspective, but I mean, this sidewalk kind of slopes and then it starts.
That or you're getting rid of Library Hill Road, I'm not sure.
Library Hill Road's out here, and you kind of slope up the hill there, so it's not, it will be a nice expansive lawn, it will all be sloped.
Uh-huh,
So,
okay.
you know, you could do, as the rendering suggests, you could be out there with a picnic blanket and kind of hang out there. It's not a flat surface where we can put furniture.
Right.
Something to add to the library of things, Tina, picnic blankets.
Take out lunches
Actually.
before you know it.
For all the kids out there.
Parasols.
How much outdoor paving, like patio, what we were calling patio or courtyard, has been lost?
Let's, if I could, let me,
Oh, sure,
because
go
then we
ahead.
can look at the plan. That'll be probably better to talk about that, Lisa, but, I mean, part of our reduction strategy was to reduce, the amount of hardscape.
Mhm.
So we have reduced it, but you'll see here in the plan that it is still a nice usable area.
Do you have a question?
I
Richard?
do,
Yeah,
it's
go
very
ahead.
minor. On the north side, I was walking by the other day, I noticed there's a stairway, brick stairway attached to, with the, done recently. Is that gonna be knocked off and made so it fits better than, I know there's an exit there or a door.
We are rebuilding
that-
that, yes. We are rebuilding that
Okay.
as an egress point out of that room, yeah.
Thank
So one other exterior vignette to share here, and then we can look at the landscape plan. So this is, you've seen this photo a million times too. It's important to show because we are now, with our reduced footprint, intending to maintain, do I have this right, Audrey, this tree and this tree?
Yep.
So those two larger trees, we are intending to maintain.
That tree is gonna have to go away, it's right on top of the septic tank.
Right, but the septic tank's going in a new location.
But there's no way you're gonna dig up the septic lines without killing that tree.
Okay.
It's a weed anyway,
It is, they both are really.
so don't feel bad about it. It's actually not very healthy. It's got that big split fork, it's rotting in the middle,
Okay.
so. I appreciate
the other
what
one
you're
too.
saying, but
Okay, no, and I appreciate your insights. We'll revisit that with our landscape collaborators, because they were advocating to save it, but we'll talk through that, and you're absolutely right, it's like on top of the septic tank.
yeah,
Ben, can I ask a couple questions about the elevations before you go on to the
Yeah.
landscape? So back to the perspective. It's so much better than in February. Thank you. And actually, I think the massing up top is nice, and I love the interplay of the sliding brick. Looks like there's a datum expressed brick going around the top of it. Can you zoom in? Do you know what I'm talking about there?
Light sort of secondary band.
Yeah,
At the very top, Andrew?
yeah, that. No, there, yeah.
That is a just sort of slightly protruding band of brick.
Yeah, I just want to zoom in and see. So is that like a,
Looks like a shadow line.
is it soldier coursed? And
Yeah.
it's okay,
Yeah,
and it's picking up that datum and then going around?
it is, and just to give it a little bit of a shadow line.
Okay, all right, that's helpful to zoom in. There's more variety and texture going in there than it looked like from far away. And I think that would be nice.
Yeah, so that soldier course, the bands that go
Yeah.
up and then the horizontal band is like recessed
Yep.
like an inch or so from the rest of
Yeah,
the
so there's a
brick. So there's a little bit,
Texture and interplay
Yeah.
in there. And then the outer lighter brick is a little more flat.
Mhm.
Okay. Can you go to the elevations real quick? So on the west, so much better, and I love the dialogue with the existing building. I think it's a great interplay there. On the south, the big window over the entrance, is that height limited by the ceiling?
Yes, and the structure that's there.
Okay, what kind of structure do you have down
I mean, just traditional steel
there? Okay.
framing.
Yeah.
But what are you alluding to? More height?
I think when you raise the height of that volume, that there's a, just feels a little bit like kind of a forehead over that. And
Well, yeah.
kind of it's that almost square proportion,
Yeah,
that 5-6
it's got-
ratio, which is
it's got a
just kind of
little-
tough.
Yeah, I don't, disagree. We can evaluate that. There may be opportunity to do some creative detailing,
Yeah.
get a little bit more height out of that.
It looks like it's like one brick width wider than the entrance. I mean, just, Just
I think it aligns with the entry, but I hear. what
sorry,
you're
this is
saying.
really nitpicking,
That's why
just
we have
subtle.
here though.
Yeah, but just the proportion of that in general.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I noticed from the interior, the windows to the right, there's a little taller window and then a couple shorter windows. Is that driven by the shelving underneath?
Yes.
Could you make maybe the left window a little lower sill or something, especially since it's for kids, just to make
Yeah,
that
this
look a little more
one-
deliberate?
Audrey, this, you're talking about this one?
Yeah, just
That
like,
one's behind the CERT desk.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that one's stopping at the silk desk,
yeah,
so that limits that sill height.
yeah. It's just, it's so close that it's just a slight tweak in one direction will make it look more intentional then. So, it's super nitpicky.
No, I appreciate it.
Um,
You're saying making it bigger potentially would make it
Yeah,
look more-
lower, yeah,
So
might
it
help
stands
it.
out more from the two to
Yeah,
the
just give it a
right.
little more hierarchy, because.
Cause it might be
Because they're
like
so
a
close
mistake
right
right
now.
now,
Yeah.
and it would look.
So it should be
okay.
either the same or clearly different.
Yeah, and then talking like inches. Um,
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
appreciate the.
And for the entrance, it's just a single entrance with a side light, right? 'Cause it's not a
Yes.
double door.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we
It's
we
like,
don't really see a major need to have the double doors.
So like, on the bottom, the door that we're looking at, that's that egress door we were talking about, right? So what does that walk out to? Like, what is that?
Let me
You'll
get
see
forward to
it
the plan, but
back.
there's a walking path around the back of the building, that you'll see here in a moment. Yeah. So we heard you, Frank, on the trees here. Looking forward, we'll look at.
Well, I mean, whatever, I just. You're not wrong, they're young trees, I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's-
I don't think it would survive, to be honest with you, that's all.
We were just literally talking about that the other day with our civil engineer and landscape, because it is, you're right, it's very much on top of the septic tank. So we'll evaluate that, but this is our other view. We're kind of a little bit off Common Road with our back towards the church and the parking lot. But the intention here is just to illustrate the nature of that corner, like we talked about, in the seating area that will be created as sort of a forecourt into the building. Yeah,
Yeah, I really like what you've done with the facade, the west facade, you know, the articulating of the, it seems different than before, and I can't remember why, but I just really like it. But, so this, from this view, that block to the right, the windows that Andrew was just talking about, that's different material for cost reasons?
yes, yeah, so yes, this is the sort of cementitious, you know, kind of panel type system. It is what we had on the previous design as
No, I know,
well.
I just
And
see.
you're picking up on it. In the previous design, like that brick turned the corner onto this facade more than it does now, but we have reduced it in an effort to get the costs on target, to just be that entry piece.
Can I ask another really nitpicky question here? This view is revealing it. So that taller volume looks nice next to it and that slides in. The parapet, I know it's just a parapet, it's not volumetric, but it stops right at the facade. Would it be possible to slide it back a couple feet? Maybe you already looked at that to make it feel more like intersecting volumes and less like.
Yeah, we
a
can do that.
superficial
That's a
thing.
good idea.
I mean, it's,
Yes.
I don't think bidders will notice that.
You're talking about the top.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the little.
Yeah, that's a fair.
The fake roof.
Yeah.
Makes it.
Yeah,
No, I appreciate all
even
that.
if it just went back the same distance, it would
Mm.
read a little differently.
Well, we appreciate all of this. I mean, we have been moving through a redesign process pretty quickly
Yeah, I
here.
know.
And what we put up last time, I was very underbaked. So yeah, I think we can manage that.
Can you say where Common Road is in this picture?
Yes, it's.
And has a decision been made about the one-wayness? It has, okay. Oh, so that's Common Road, okay.
Yes, it's here. So you're off Common Road from where you are now. You're kind of like around the corner.
Yeah, okay.
You're you're standing, like this with this diagram, you're standing way back here, like where some of the parking spaces are, that kind of turn the corner.
Got
into
it.
the
I know,
church.
yeah, I know exactly what you mean. All right.
It's not a perspective as you like approach along Common, because, and we can, once we get past this deadline, I think it's worth developing that vignette, because, I think it would be helpful to have.
I think it would too. Because it doesn't need to show the memorial or anything. I mean, for people to place themselves in it, there's no reference points that people recognize.
Yeah.
Except the turret.
And so I think to answer Marcy's earlier question, and I don't know if you have one more picture, but right along that wall, there's a little walkway, correct?
Yeah, we'll show that. So let's just, if it's okay, let's just keep going into the landscape plan. So this should answer, oops, I'm moving the wrong thing. This should answer a lot of the questions in terms of the layout of the site. Obviously, the footprint of the addition is here, turret. We still have the axial stair going up to the existing entry that's being restored. This is now a forecourt, as we've been describing, before you enter into the building. There is hardscape, paved beyond like the primary path of travel into the building. So this will be a nice, well, I guess that's helpful at that time. This will be a nice pocket of space, on hardscape. This is more of like a compacted stone. So you can imagine, cafe tables and chairs kind of sprinkled out there as well. And along the front here. So these are, all these are new trees, so there'll be a canopy of trees above you. And you could imagine seating here as well. This is a knee wall that you can sit on. It is retaining earth because we've kind of revised our approach to all of this hillside. And then this is a sort of stone wall to kind of frame that space and sort of separate it from the parking. And then here's that path. We're imagining this really as just maintenance and emergency egress out of the building. That's not really a common path that people would be using.
Right, but that would be accessible if it needed to as an emergency egress.
Yeah.
Point, yeah.
Yep.
Is there a book drop there now into the surf test?
There is.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh.
So that's this, yep, good question.
It's one window up. It goes straight
Oh,
into
yeah, right,
the.
yeah, it goes right into
Oh,
the-
nice.
yeah.
So I mean, in some ways, you guys have taken like where there was gonna be building and just like replaced it with patio space.
Yeah, and this.
Like there's a nice big enclosed outside. area
Future
right now.
expansion.
Future expansion.
This zone here.
May
kind
I
of
be
didn't
dead by
exist.
then.
Okay.
There's now more landscape zone between this sort of court area and parking. These are those two trees that we're talking about.
Right.
We'll reconsider those. So there's a bit more layering between parking and building now. than there
Could
was
you
before.
put your existing drop box on the road? And create like a driveway?
And then just to end, sorry, I keep saying this, but you've seen this slide a bunch as well, leading up in the previous process, but the nature of the plantings, the trees, ground covers, and the types of shrubs that we described before all exist now. We have reduced the quantity of them, but that's something that we can easily add more of should that opportunity become available. And then the palette of landscape materials along the bottom is the same that we had before as well.
Is the hardscape picture on the top right, is that the side of the building? Is that what that material is? Or is that actually part of the walls and things?
You're here, Lisa?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a representative example.
of the outside of the,
those
that
things.
side of the building,
Yeah.
okay.
Is there a spot for the memorial garden? That's what I just said?
Yes, yes. Is it still up near the ramp on
Yeah.
Between the ramp and
That's where we
the
learned
stairs, yeah.
Is here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I believe it's still in that area.
where the parking spaces were removed, is that gonna be lawn? Or some kind of like the packed gravel, or what is that gonna be?
That's intended to be long. There's a little bit of a planting bed turning the corner here. Through here, but that's intended to be long. I think that's one of those things that hopefully, like if we can manage it, we could reconsider parking there if the numbers come back in a good spot.
Can we talk about parking a little?
Mhm.
Like, what does parking look like right now for this?
Are they gonna allow parking on Common Road too, or they will? Okay.
So parking can be along that whole
Yeah,
right-hand
they're not,
side,
yeah, yes, I think.
all the way down to the church,
This
right?
whole side of Common Road.
Yeah, so the select board, when they voted, they voted to, I'll say widen Common Road from the corner of Library Hill to sort of the parking area. So not all the way down to the church, but you
You
can still
could
park.
still park
Right,
there.
right, because it will still be one, so it will be one way.
Right.
But yeah, so they've agreed to, so right now where people park up on the lawn, we're gonna just extend that to actually be more dedicated parking.
So how many spaces would you estimate that is? If people were to park along the entire thing, like, is it?
People will still be able to park the whole length, right? Even in
Yes.
front of the church the way you do now.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and keep in mind though, with the restoration of the historic entrance, it'll be much easier for people to park at the former fire station and just walk across the street and go into the building. So
And that's
technically,
gonna be always okay, like that's.
yeah, I
gonna be
mean,
fine.
we have no, if we do something with the building at some point, but the plan would be to keep municipal parking there.
And we don't need to like repave it and reline it or anything
No,
like that.
it's actually in fairly
Decent
decent
shape.
shape. And when, so the planning department right now is redoing a town center redesign study. And they will look at that intersection anyways, as far as making it more pedestrian safe, whether it's better crosswalks or sidewalks. They're looking at the intersection at Great Road as well, because anyone who's tried to cross the street, there is no pedestrian crossing. So that stuff will all be part of the town center redesign. With the understanding that people would be parking and walking to either the town hall, the library, Hale School, Center School, whatever it needs to be, Russell's.
I mean, that's where you get your funding. And so
Denise?
there's one accessible parking space. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
One
Yes.
designated accessible parking space. And that's all we're like required
Correct.
to have. And in the spirit of best intentions, we don't want to designate a second one.
So, did you have a chance to look at the ZBA decision?
I did not.
Okay, so we do need to look, because when we went before the ZBA, we had 2 accessible spaces, and if they put that in the decision, we will have to revisit that.
But we probably should revisit it anyway, because
Yes.
one is not.
I mean, I think ideally, if we were able to put that one parking space back on Crescent, where it's right next to the ramp, that would be an ideal location for another accessible spot.
So that,
Oh, yeah,
that ramp is okay to be flat now? Like, I think before we had to zigzag because of the grade, or,
We did zigzag, the difference there, it's kind of nuanced, but that was a sloped walk, which
Okay.
is a 1 to 20 slope, which just
Okay.
means it's more gradual than a ramp. And as a result of being more gradual, it does not need handrails.
so this one will have
This is
handrails.
this is
Got
a
it.
ramp, the way the code reads, so this will have handrails.
Gotcha,
Because it's steeper, it doesn't need to be as long, so we can do a straight shot.
gotcha. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I
But I
forgot
think-
about that.
I think, yes, if we're able to reconsider this as a second accessible parking spot, I think that would be a really smart thing to do if we can manage it.
Morgan, go ahead.
I was actually about to ask this before the parking conversation started. Denise, do you think it's possible that we could get a little sign in that parking lot across the street that just says like public parking for town buildings? Because I think there are people who don't know if it's okay to park there or not. And maybe just a little sign that says something to that effect might be helpful.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, clearly the neighbors know, because people park there overnight every single day. So somebody knows it's okay to park there. But yes, we could certainly do like a municipal parking sign.
Okay, thanks.
Do you know the timing of the redesign of all of the traffic work relative to the timing of the building roughly?
So it's longer than expected. Originally, the preliminary design was supposed to be done to go to town meeting in the spring so they're planning to get on the state transportation improvement program. And their target was this year with going to town meeting to ask for $500,000 for the design funds. Once we have a design, then you can get on the state's TIP program to fund the construction. The preliminary design will not be done until probably January. So that will push out another year. So I would say as far as the redesign, but that being said, they have taken the project, Crescent Street, Common Road, all those are in consideration of their redesign. So their engineers are aware of what we're doing. Part of one of the projects that's not really through this program, but that they're working on through Complete Streets is to rebuild the sidewalk or rebuild and then add the sidewalk from Pilot Grove Apartments to the Hale School. So that will be a more defined sidewalk. So again, people can walk there, across the street, go into the library. But as far as the town center itself, we're a few years out, just based on the timing and the program at the state.
Too bad.
This is just a consideration to have for the future. So when I worked in Concord, there was a very small shared municipal lot between the library and the Umbrella Arts Center. And what we did was created a shared calendar between the two organizations so that if there was a big event, each organization would know that the parking would probably be consumed by that. So it might be worthwhile to have just sort of some sort of calendar approach
Well, we
with
have
Hale
that.
Center already. that exists.
So we use reservation system to book all the municipal spaces. The parking lots are on there. So if someone's having an event, like when they plan the Assabet Beer Fest, they have to request to use our parking lot so that we earmark them for a specific event.
I even mean like when Center School has chorus night and if you're not there 45 minutes early, you park at St. Isidore's. I even mean like the schools are a big driver, I think, of that particular parking. So it might just be nice to have a shared system where Tina doesn't want to have an environmental program on a Wednesday night if Center is having an event and there's not going to be any place for anybody to park.
Yeah, we could try that. It'd be about getting.
I
communication
totally get it.
from
It's
the
a
parties, but
suggestion,
yes.
it's not a requirement, blah, 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 but it's just it might be a nice approach.
No, I agree. The information's not as forthcoming.
Correct.
So.
I'm working on that myself.
So, yes.
That's all we had for the evening. Can we click back through anything if necessary?
Yeah.
I did a nice job.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Did you have a question, Barbie?
I have a couple. Yes, first of all, we had reconstructed the restoration of the upper level a few years ago. Is any of that preserved or is that all gone in this new?
It's all being maintained.
The
It's all-
floors, the
it's-
lights.
It's gonna be maintained, okay. Then, remember that little court outside the children's downstairs area that was like a little
Oh,
arena?
yeah.
Is that going to be used for space now?
No, that's going away.
It's going away,
Yeah, the
but
patio,
yeah.
sort of, yeah.
it allowed for more square footage, I'm hoping.
No.
No, it's just going away, okay.
It allows for light, like that's
For
the
light
the
too,
windows
yeah,
still
but
exist
it
from a
wasn't
light perspective, but
used for
that
part of
opening
the
the door and going out.
Okay, and then I'm sorry, because I've missed out on some of these meetings. Just curious about the choice of the white look, starkly contrasting against the old. Is that a design consideration? In other words, you don't want to have the same brick or the same color or anything. That's a decision that's financial or
No, it's
aesthetic?
actually, what is the wording? There's not recommendation that you don't use the red brick on brick. What did we talk about one time? I don't know the correct.
I remember that.
wording.
You can't
Secretary,
match the red, it would look odd.
Yeah.
the Secretary of the Interior has a lot of recommendations on how to deal with historic buildings and add on to them and like a very broad brush, a kind of paraphrase of that is to not try to mimic what's there through material or texture or color.
Okay.
So we went through this a lot during the previous design process to land on a complementary palette that didn't try to mimic the red that was there.
Thanks. And you'll notice, Barbie, that like the first iteration, going back to when this went to town meeting, was mostly glass. Like that is pretty massively changed. It's still beautiful, but like it's not like mirrored glass anymore, you know what I mean? So there's been a lot of ways to try to.
And then I have one more question. Is this new construction making an effort to be green in terms of environmentally
Oh, yes.
Yep.
progressive and as
Very
much as
much so.
possible?
Yes, it is. It will be meeting the new specialized stretch energy code. It will be an all-electric building, meaning there's no fossil fuels in the building. And there's other, sustainably minded choices that we've made in terms of material selections and that sort of thing. It is not pursuing a certification from like the USGBC or Passive House or anything like that, but it is very much going to be as environmentally conscious and sustainable as we can.
And the certifications tend to be pretty expensive.
Well,
right? So I don't know.
Massachusetts stretch code is probably the most progressive energy code in the world. And especially given the climate that we're in, so you would easily hit those targets
Yeah.
without going through the
Without a doubt.
certification.
Yeah, without a doubt. We're just not.
And Stowe has gone for the highest level.
And I will just add, Barbie, if you're not aware, we were recognized as only one of 2 projects by the Massachusetts Green Communities, and recognizing our project. And so that's why they bestowed $500,000 to make it an all-electric building. So, again, only 2 projects received the grant, and we were one of them, so.
I kind of assumed that would be the case, but I just wanted to ask the question. Thank you.
Can I ask a question about the brick and color? We had a couple palettes a while ago. Will there be an opportunity for like a final review of it, like the front of the building of like this or
Yes,
that?
so if you remember, my timeline is getting blurred myself, but towards the end of last summer into the fall, we had the samples here, and what we determined from that process and the feedback from all of you is that we would build into our specifications that will be going out to bid a mock-up process, that they'll be constructed, the mason, once we have a mason on the project, we'll build some mock-ups based on our initial selections of what we reviewed with all of you, and then we'd have an opportunity to look at them on the site and make a final decision. Okay.
I was at Newport this weekend and there was a building that was like old red brick and they added an addition and they put painted red brick. I should have taken a picture to bring as a whatnot to do. It was quite stunning.
Awful, you mean?
It was terrible. It was terrible. I mean, it was a Boys and Girls Club, so maybe that was like the intention was to be more fun, but it was terrible.
Okay, I'm gonna go on with the agenda, so I'm gonna hand it over to Matt for his update.
Sure, and see if I'm able to host.
You should be.
disabled. Don't seem to be able to share screen here, but I do have my,
We don't have, I'll make you a co-host, but I don't have any restrictions on that.
interesting. There we go. Now I'm able to. Excellent. See, that's going to load in just a second. So I won't belabor it too much. Much of the progress to report over the past month has been on display as part of Design Lab's presentation. Sorry. So I don't want to go into too much detail. You've heard quite a bit about that from Design Lab already, but since the previous time that we were together on February 7th, Design Labs invested a considerable amount of effort in the construction documents, taking those, as we saw, to 75% completion, and then submitting those to both estimators for the estimate reconciliation meeting, which was on March 11th, which yielded 2 reconciled estimates, which we looked at earlier this evening as part of Design Lab's presentation. And that leads us up to now. So that's sort of been the progress. You've sort of seen all of what we've been up to in the course of that presentation. So while I'm in this document, I guess I can, part of my monthly reports, I report on budget and schedule. So we can go to project budget. What we've been looking at in those estimates is revised numbers for the building construction portion of the project budget. So this number here at the top will be replaced with a reconciled, with the reconciled estimate that Fennessy has prepared as part of Design Labs, as part of Design Labs package here. But I'm pleased to report that all other aspects of the project remain on target, and progress in terms of the overall project budget is represented in terms of these figures here for invoicing for Design Lab Colliers, and forthcoming will be for bid docs online for electronic plan room hosting, as well as the owner's side estimator PM&C, who was brought on behalf of the town of Stowe for the estimate reconciliation process. But I can report that all other aspects of this, outside of the construction budget, which we've talked about extensively this evening, are on target. I can stop there for a second if there are any questions.
I have a question about the transformer. Where does that get factored into the budget? If we don't, I mean, there was a discussion that we might have to buy the transformer. Is that factored in, or is that a wait and see what happens? Does that fall into the contingency plan?
Only if there were a difference in the cost relative to what we estimated. But yeah, the thinking there was that we're seeing long lead times on many components of electrical infrastructure in particular. And so that was, the thought was that would be specified by the electrical engineer and then purchased fairly early on, as early as possible in the process, so that we could sort of eat up some of the lead time so that it arrives more in sync with the construction of the project.
So you buy it before?
Yes. If you knew what was going to be specified as part of the electrical design, it's essentially
And I will just add, when we're talking about some of the costs, so, Marcy, you mentioned Tina being in the building earlier. So over the last few weeks, you may have seen, so the highway department's been doing some work for us. They have removed the carpet, they removed the counter, they're removing the lift. They removed some of that glass on that second floor, weird half wall. They are going to do some work in the attic, and they're going to do some of the landscaping as well. So by having the highway department do some of those things, again, the hope would be that we can save costs for the construction part. So with the exception of the asbestos abatement, so it's hard because all the walls have it in the joint compound. So they've been working around that, but again, we're still trying to do as much as we can to defray the construction cost to keep the project on target.
To that point, the other aspect of that I guess I could discuss that we had talked about earlier is sort of the contingency that is our safety valve, if you will, for cost control. That's reflected here in the bottom in the owners and construction contingency lines. So customarily we'll carry 5% of the estimated construction cost as construction contingency. We've also added 5% as a reasonable, I think, recommendation for owners contingency, which is the town's reserve fund for any scope changes as directed from the owner's side throughout the project. Okay. So since the release of my initial monthly report, there has been an update to the schedule. So I have a new revised schedule to share. This jives with what was discussed in sort of early on in Design Lab's presentation just now, but this is focused on the completion of the construction documents and how that rolls into the bid process. So our last, since our last meeting, we had gotten the CD set to the estimators. You see a number of subtasks that we've completed under item 15 here relative to the redesign. So the CD set construction documents was sent to the estimators, was reviewed, got the estimates back, had the reconciliation meeting, and then the design lab was able to take that information and begin coordination in advance of tonight in updating in their drawings and their specifications based on that data. So coming up is a completion date in advance of the architectural drawing package from the sub-consultant engineers on the project. And then once final drawings are received from each of the individual sub-consultant engineers, landscape, etc. Design Lab's completed CD set, as Ben mentioned, is on target for completion next Friday. And then the following week is when we would anticipate, as Denise mentioned, that is live in the central register and on Bid Docs Online for the statutory bidding requirements that needs to be advertised for a certain duration of time. I'll zoom in because I realize that this is fairly small. And what I'll do is,
I think it's in the
minimize
report
that.
that, is it in
Yeah,
the
it
report
is.
that we
It's
sent
in
out
the
to everybody?
report.
So,
I did just want to
yeah.
make that a little bit clearer. I'm sorry, I realize this is microscopic. But what we're looking at, I'll sort of get right to the base of this. The filed subcontractors, which is typically 30% to 50% of the overall project value, will have a sense by April 24th whether we're on target. The full general rebid is targeted for 8th of May, is when we'll get hard bid numbers for the bid document package. We would anticipate, should that bid be successful, the notice to proceed and entering into the construction phase shortly thereafter.
Did that estimate play out the last time around? The filed sub bids were about 20 to 30 or
So yeah, they're depending on, it varies by project, but it will see, I think 30 might be a little on the low side, somewhere between 35 and 50% of the overall value of the project is in things that are filed sub trades. So that's masonry, structural steel is one. There are, I think, 16 or 18 different components of construction that are organized that way under Mass Chapter 149 construction laws.
but do you recall if that
It's 40,
very large
it was
range of percentage
42%.
for our last one?
Yes.
Thank you.
And that's including a fire protection number that was somewhat off the.
Yes.
So basically, we are gonna be getting like the data back, the bids back. Like, we will know if we were on target by which date? Is that the May
May
8th
8th
date?
is the full number, but we'll have a sense directionally of what half of the number is going to be
Okay.
on April 24th,
Got it.
because the filed sub bids are such a large portion of the overall work.
Got it, okay.
What if that fire suppression comes back high again? Does that come out of the contingency or does that have
Yes.
to be rethought? It comes out of the contingency.
It does.
Because we have to accept it. Right?
Well, we can't reject just one piece of the project.
Right.
So if we're accepting the total bid,
We have to accept that as.
and if there's, I mean, the goal would be that there's multiple filed sub bids for fire protection and we can take the
Mhm.
lowest, we would have to take the lowest.
Right.
But yes, we can't just exclude a portion of it for awarding. the
But we've
contract.
been differently proactive this time.
You're in
Yes,
the process of being differently proactive.
Yes.
Yes, we are getting on the phone the rest of this week and next week, trying to get bidders to pay attention to the project.
and then the week after that,
And yes.
And I'll
and then
be
until
honest,
April 23rd.
we heard from the original company that spec'd it out that said we would have bid, we just didn't. So they said they're gonna bid this time around. We'll see if that happens. But they reached out directly when the story broke in our local paper about the fire protection cost. So they say they will, we'll see.
And we would anticipate they would be lower, because that's where we got the original.
Mhm.
Got it. Got it.
Are you through, Matt?
I Yeah, unless there's any
Okay,
questions, I
any
can stop
questions
sharing
from
and hand the floor back.
Okay, I do not believe we have any invoices to approve or review. So then the next thing is to possibly vote to approve this design to go forward.
So can I just ask one more procedural question? So we approve tonight, and then the trustees are gonna take a quick vote on Tuesday night, correct? And then full steam ahead Wednesday morning, right? That's the plan?
That's what I've been told. Yeah, Tina just told me that tonight with the trustee vote, so, yes, that's the goal.
And now it's.
I'll make a motion. We move forward with the design as presented this evening with the availability to look further at interior spaces as the project moves along.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
So I would just,
No?
he's on the exterior design
Oh,
committee.
I'm sorry.
I don't think you should be able to second that, I'm sorry.
Sorry, Richard.
Does that still include the option for the ambient noise exploration at a later date?
That's kind of what I'm wondering, like, what does this include if we vote? Yeah,
Denise, do you consider that a subset of interior modifications as deemed appropriate?
I do. I mean, again, I think for us, it's the look of the rooms, the style, the shape, what's going into the actual general contractor's documents. So to me, I wouldn't consider ambient sound part of the GC process. Maybe it is, but
To me, that's kind of like a piece of equipment.
Yeah, it could
So
easily
like,
be,
almost like computer.
yes, I think that could easily be something that we purchase as part of our soft cost furniture and equipment and all of that, if that was something we deemed appropriate.
Thank you. I'll second them.
Okay, any other discussion?
I have one to discuss.
yeah.
I kind of, forgive me for being so blunt, but I'm just going to be. We're in a position where we really don't have a choice. We have to approve this tonight or it's gonna really screw things up, which means we're gonna essentially vote to approve this to go out to bid, even though we have identified some problem areas that we will attempt to solve with furniture, which I'm still not fully understanding, but that's fine. But it really means that we can't make any changes to, do we want to add a little quiet area downstairs? Because that would involve a wall or, so is that just sort of where we're at and we just kind of have to make this happen and this is where we are? Is that the general opinion?
I mean, to put it bluntly, yes.
Right.
We certainly can delay, but it's 2% a month escalation cost is what's estimated. So
Oh, right.
if we push this out 2 months, we're cutting more of the project.
No, I know. I'm gonna vote yes, and I don't think we should delay it. I guess I just fundamentally have a problem with approving this as is when we have identified multiple concern areas and we're like crossing our fingers that we'll be able to address them with things that are separate from the physical building. I just want to, I guess my question is, do we realistically think that we're going to be able to address some of those concerns? Or is it going to be, oh, well, we talked about it, but we voted yes, so, oh, well.
the only one that can't be addressed in a flexible way, I think, is if there was gonna be discussion about switching the teen room and the quiet reading space and then eliminating that like solid wall there, right? That would be because they brought up a lot of different ideas about how to address most of the rest of the issues, right? Like that's the one thing that we would have to decide essentially. Is that right?
I mean, I would say yes. I mean, I can defer to design lab of what could possibly change, but I think even if, in my opinion, is even if the conversation happened to switch the teen room and the quiet reading, I still think we don't get rid of that lower meeting room, because quite frankly, if you get rid of the quiet reading space, that eliminates another meeting room. So then you would be down to just the one program meeting room. There would be nothing else in that building. And I think that is doing a disservice to the community. So I think even if you switch those two spaces, the quiet meeting room would be the small 200 square foot teen room, you would still keep a small meeting room because that would be your only alternative. Because again, with the quiet reading space, you could fit a table with 8 chairs and have a meeting if you wanted to.
Right, I guess my question is, are we voting on those as those dedicated spaces?
No.
No, okay.
No, because that's all based on furniture. There's
Right.
nothing construction wise that's gonna affect,
Right, okay.
right?
Yes, correct. And if I could chime in, I'm hesitant to say this, but it needs to be out there. Like, you can always make changes. Like, there is time to make changes until the construction team is out there building what it is we've designed on paper.
It's whether or not
We-
that change costs more money.
We try to limit
Yeah.
that, as Matt and everyone will attest to, because that comes at an expense, because you're then paying a premium, because you've lost a competitive market. But if we want to change that wall down the road from a solid wall to a movable wall, or remove it altogether, like, there's time to make that decision. And I just want to put it out there, like, we're not trying to be dismissive of any of the feedback that we're receiving tonight, but like, the sooner we can get this out to bid and get real numbers, the better off we're going to be. Because to Denise's point, we have more than, not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in this estimate of additional escalation that we didn't have before. And that continues to go up every time we wait. Our goal was to be out to bid in March, and it's, for good reason, it's taken us a little longer than we anticipated, and we're not going to be back out to bid until early April now. But we got to get this thing back out on the street. And then if we need to reevaluate some of these things that we've heard tonight, like, we will absolutely do that, and we will work with you all to come
And
up
I
with the
think
right solution.
to Morgan's point, like, this committee doesn't go away tomorrow once we say yes. So if we want to revisit these things, it's incumbent upon us to revisit these things.
Yeah,
Right?
it's-
Like Tina says, anybody have anything to the agenda? And we say, yes, we have something we want to add to the agenda. And we talk about it again.
It's counterintuitive, but putting it out to bid now would result in the savings and escalation that would give you more flexibility
Yeah.
to do the changes that we're talking about,
Mhm.
which are not enormous structural changes.
To be clear, I think we should vote tonight. I just wanted everybody to like be clear on what they're voting on. That was the only point I was asking for,
That's a good point.
yeah.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Can I ask a procedural question? So there are 2 committees here. Or is it 1 vote? Is it 2 votes? How are we?
So the way that the committees were formed, it's the 2.0 committee that votes on the design, that then goes to technically the library trustees to vote. So I would say it's the 2.0 committee, not the exterior design, on the actual putting it out to bid.
Are you, as the exterior building committee, are you happy with what you've seen tonight? You feel confident going forward with that?
Oh, compared to a month and a half ago? But not even compared to a month and a half ago. I think it looks really great, and I think you've made some great advances on it, and it's going to sit well in the landscape and look good for the city. So, yes.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Morgan,
Yes.
Denise,
yes.
Tina, yes. Frank,
Yes.
Lisa,
Yes.
Marcy,
Yes.
Morgan.
You already called.
Oh, sorry, Kat,
Yes.
Aisha.
Yes.
Sunny,
Yes.
all in favor?
And that was
Unanimous? Sorry, I never do
It's
that
okay.
right. That was unanimous. Thank you. Okay, last but not least, I think, is the minutes from,
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes from January 8th as drafted.
Second.
I have to do roll call, right? Morgan,
Yes.
Sunny,
Yes.
Aisha.
Yes.
Kat.
I abstained. I didn't actually look at them.
Thank you.
And I would do both committees because they were here and participated.
Okay, Marcy. Frank,
Yes.
Tina. Yes, Denise.
Yes.
Oh my God. Melissa. Richard,
Yes.
Andrew.
Yes.
That was one abstention, right? Kat abstained from that one.
Wow, I thought we were voting on the February minutes.
The ones I printed that Tina sent out was January
Did we not? Did I
We'll, we'll
send out
just
the
do it
wrong
next
ones?
time. I think we've already voted on
Oh, I'm
January, but,
I can check.
it'll just make
Yeah,
it
we
double
did.
secure.
All right, sorry about that. That might have been.
I don't know, I
mistake.
printed the ones that she sent
So
out.
did I. Okay,
Who seconded the motion to not? Thank you.
I will check that. Sorry about that. All right, so is that it? Anything else? Anyone else?
I will make a motion to adjourn at 8:42 PM.
Second.
I think you could just show of hands in the clear.
Everybody raise their hand. Thank you.
And Morgan raised her hand.
Yes, she did. Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you. Appreciate it.